something utterly satisfying about preparing a meal ahead of time, placing it on the shelf, and then knowing that at some point, maybe tomorrow or next month, dinner is already done. And I'm talking about meals with minimal demands. As in, step 1, open a mason jar. Step 2, pour the contents into an instant or crock pot. Step 3, walk away and return to whatever it is you were doing before you realized that you needed to feed yourself or the other humans in your house. Step 4, walk back and behold, your breakfast, lunch, or dinner is already done. In this video, I'm sharing 8 breakfast, lunch, and dinner ideas that you can dump and go or fix and freeze, that as you prep, your kitchen and sink will stay super clean. Now, these recipes may be a change of pace from what you normally do. Because while working only with fresh ingredients is great, it's not always 100% practical. Food does go bad, and beans take hours to soak. Your energy level is depleted after a day full of errands, so nope, not making that for dinner. Or your appetite changes. That's where Meals in Jars comes to the rescue. The shelf life is months, not days, and you don't need multiple freezers to stockpile. And with an Instant Pot pressure cooker, your meal is ready in minutes. Here are several ideas you're gonna wanna try for dinner tonight. Chicken tortilla soup takes just 5 minutes to make in your Instant Pot or 10 minutes on your stovetop. Remove the lid, pour ingredients that include freeze-dried chicken, dehydrated corn, onion seasonings, and tortilla strips, and before you know it, you'll be ladling this into a bowl. Optional toppings include sour cream, tortilla chips, and fresh cilantro. I save the leftovers in a mason jar for lunch the next day. Any way you serve this, you can't go wrong. Now let me show you how easily it comes together so that you can have this on your shelf. I'm going to show you a recipe card like this for each of the 8 recipes that I'm sharing. Pause the video if you need a longer look, but I'll also tuck directions in the description box. One thing that's great about soups in jars is that you get to control what ingredients you put in or leave out, so you don't have to worry about preservatives and sodium like you do in store-bought convenience soups. Dried soups allow you to enjoy from-scratch cooking even when you have a limited time, because all you have to do is add water. Including dehydrated and freeze-dried foods as just a small part of your pantry means that you have options to create dozens of meals using staples already assembled, so you don't have to run to the store for that one forgotten ingredient. I'll show and share how to dehydrate your own ingredients and a clever way to get started with freeze-dried foods on a budget in just a bit. Are you ready for a feast in a jar? I'm not exaggerating. This is truly a holiday meal that can sit on your shelf ready to impress for a special occasion or Sunday dinner. The only special ingredient this recipe uses is dehydrated cube butter. While you'll see me use a jar of home canned turkey breast, you could easily substitute any fresh or frozen meat you have on hand, such as chicken or beef. In fact, keep that in mind as you watch all of these recipes, because my emphasis is more on the creative assembly of meals in jars, how to safely do it, and convince you to start if you haven't dipped your toe in yet. Many of these recipes can and should be tweaked to your family's taste preference, which is the real win. Darling, once the sage and thyme dried herb starts to marinate with the cranberry goodness of chicken bouillon stock, the smells in your home will have everyone convinced that you're making a multi-course meal. Lucky for you, all you had to do was dump an assembled jar and meat into your crock pot and pour into a soup bowl. This slow cooker meal comes together in a hurry. All you do is measure out and store your dried cranberries, dehydrated butternut squash, dried onion, and wild rice in one jar or bag, while portioning the chicken bouillon and herbs in another. This recipe will last a good 5 to 6 months on your shelf. Cook on high heat in your slow cooker for 4 to 5 hours or on low for 7 to 8 hours. These next meals are crowd and company pleasers too. You must make this flavorful appetizer in a jar that will keep you calm and collected when you have unexpected company. Better yet, this recipe uses ingredients you probably have in your pantry and fridge right now. We're gonna make cheesy bean dip. Y'all, this meal uses a can of refried beans and jalapenos that I dehydrated from home. Add dried onions and a few seasonings and cheese, and your guests will never suspect that this has been sitting on your shelf for weeks or months. The key to this recipe is to use an oven-safe bowl, then add boiling water to the dehydrated bean mixture. After adding water, you'll let things sit and rehydrate for about 5 minutes, then stir again and place in the fridge for 15 minutes. Preheat the oven to 350 degrees and sprinkle shredded cheese on top and bake for 15 minutes. Remove and serve hot with tortilla chips. This is a super economical and straightforward recipe to make. I already had a can of dehydrated refried beans, which straight off the drying rack look like this.
I just used a mortar and pestle to crumble it. Transfer your beans to a blender where you'll add your taco seasoning, sun-dried tomatoes, which are ones that I dried from a diced can of store-bought tomatoes, a pinch of dried onion and dehydrated jalapenos, and then you're going to give this a thorough pulse until things are well integrated and extremely fragrant and looks a bit like this. To vacuum seal, I use a Food Saver mason jar sealer placed over a jar lid, then push down to evenly seat things. Insert the conical tip of the vacuum pump and then squeeze until you have at least 20 psi. That's it, the jar is sealed. Just know that this method is only appropriate to prolong the shelf life of dry goods to be stored at room temperature.
If this is our first time meeting, hi, I'm Cassandra from the blog becomingafarmgirl.com. I'm here to help you start canning and preserving your own delicious ingredients right at home and share ways to use your home can pantry and meals your family will love. So click the link to start getting delicious recipes straight to your inbox each time I post a video. Now you might say, Cassandra, I don't have a freeze dryer, and that's okay because I don't either. Now ultimately I see us making the investment into a freeze dryer, but that is still further down the road. So for now I am purchasing freeze dried foods as a way to, number one, ensure that I even enjoy cooking with freeze-dried foods. And two, I want to make sure that I already have a collection of meals and inventory rotation. I've kind of fixed or thought about all the kinks so that when I get a freeze dryer, girl, I can just rock and roll. Thrive Life freeze-dried food is a trusted brand for quality, taste, and value among the food preservation community, and I do enjoy the quality of their food. To be fully transparent, you can make it a business thing with a team and all, but I ain't doing that. I'm a customer, so if you use my links, and I certainly do appreciate it, it's like an affiliate, and anyone from the very beginning can do that. But I became a consultant because if you do, you get access to the quarterly sales 1 to 2 days before anyone else. And since there aren't any fees or a markup to do so, I figured why not, so I could just beat the rush. Inventory and stocking is tricky for any business these days, so I figured why not. Plus, it has been super easy to start and suspend my subscription, which I do, since I only purchase around the sales. If you want to eat clean and healthy without additives, preservatives, spoilage, or waste, having a portion of your pantry diversified with freeze-dried foods is an option to consider.
There's nothing quite as comforting as a steaming bowl of chili on a cold fall or winter day, so why not take a few minutes to prep a few jars of home-style beef chili in jars ready and waiting for that snowy day or stay-at-home weekend meal. And this recipe can be kept vegetarian if that's your thing. While I wait on purchasing a freeze dryer, I appreciate the quality alternative I get from Thrive freeze-dried foods. Do you see how this meat doesn't have fillers and how tender it is? On the days where my husband beats me home or I'm under the weather, these are the meals that he or anyone really can assemble. If you have mason jars on hand, dried staples like beans, a simple dehydrator, and even just a few cans of freeze-dried meats, these are meals that can easily be on your shelf too. You're gonna have to let me know if you're the kind of person that on road trips or if you're spending a few vacation days at a place that has a kitchen, will pack food for several meals to offset eating out. That is so me, and there have been times when it's felt like I have packed half of my kitchen with coolers and equipment. But let me tell you, I have found that having assembled meals like this, in which I'll either grab a few jars or use food safety hydrating bags, is definitely way more ideal. One, because it's super lightweight, and two, because it's easy to cook in a single pot or crock. This means that I can get a break from cooking and I don't spend any time planning a menu because I've already got completed meals with meats and veggies. Oh, and cleanup is super easy too.
Hey, I wanted to jump in with a few recipe tips and address some of the things that you may see me doing. All right, here's the first tip. So if you are storing these jars beyond 5 days and you're using freeze-dried meat with your meals, it can be done, but the meat must be placed in a separate jar or bag. At the present moment, I am smack dab in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and so I am going to be relying on these meals almost consecutively so that I can prep for those holiday meals and not be completely stressed out. So that's why you see me combining everything together. But again, if this is not your case and you want to store it for, days, weeks, or months into the future, always separate your meats. They cannot be stored with the other ingredients for long term. All right, so this next tip is about shelf life. And the shelf life of each jar is roughly the length of the shortest ingredient that's stored in them. And I usually go between 3 to 6 months, but as a general rule of thumb, here's what you need to look out for. condensation on the inside of the jar, or mold growth. This is especially true if your home runs humid. Also, shelf stable doesn't mean indefinite shelf life, so you've got to be watchful with ingredients that retain some moisture, specifically figs, apricots, and tomatoes. So most of the meals that I've shared are plant-based, and as such, they are super shelf stable. You might ask me what the right dehydrator is for you, and to that I say, yep, that one. Because after dehydrating from a thrifted $5 entry-level one and then eventually getting a fancier one, here's what I can tell you for sure. They both give quality results. Sweetheart, here's what you've really got to consider. The footprint that you want your dehydrator to take up on your counter space, and then how much interaction with your dehydrator you really want to have. When I was in an apartment, my cheap $5 one worked great, and it was small and convenient to both use on my countertop space and to store. Now that we're in a townhouse, I mostly keep the larger COSORI Dehydrator in our basement. As I mentioned earlier, the second difference is how much you want to fuss with your dehydrator. Now, with your entry-level ones, you'll need to remember to rotate the racks to ensure sufficient air circulation, and you'll have to set a timer so that you know when to turn the machine off. With the COSORI, it has a built-in timer, and the air movement design is much better, so you don't have to rotate your racks. So just pick the one that makes the most sense for your budget and your space. Now, I'm always going to recommend something that you can have and hold in your hands. The book Dehydrated Meals in a Bag by Tammy Gangloff is a winner if you're looking for a recipe book to add to your kitchen library. Definitely grab this one. Getting started is actually pretty easy because it only requires the use of your already dehydrated foods. But if you have yet to dehydrate anything, consider watching my video on the best foods to dehydrate. Now let's talk about the gadgets that I use to seal my jars. Now, could you go with a fancy electric jar sealer? Yes, and if you have that, of course that's what you'll use. But if you don't, I don't recommend getting one. Instead, get yourself this inexpensive gadget, a brake bleeder.
If you don't want to shell out $100 or more for one of the commercial vacuum sealer machines, or just want a non-electric, super simple option, it's also safe and easy to use a brake bleeder vacuum that you can pick up at AutoZone or any hardware store, and even online for around 20 to 30 bucks. A mason jar sealer comes in two sizes to fit regular and wide mouth jars, so be sure to know which one you want or both to start. To use, place the Food Saver mason jar sealer over the top of the jar and canning lid, and then push down to make sure it's completely and evenly seated. Then place the vacuum tip into the adapter. Next, pump the brake bleeder and watch the gauge. Pump until you have at least 20 psi in the vacuum. The higher the reading, the higher the vacuum. I usually pump until I'm closer to 25. Then between 20 and 25, pull the vacuum tip out of the hole, then remove the jar sealer attachment from the jar. That's it, your jar is sealed. I'm going to leave Miss Heidi from the channel Rain Country's video below. She's how I found out about this method.
All right, those are all the recipe tips that I have for now. Let's get back to making some meals.
This hamburger noodle pasta is an easy one skillet meal you can have on the table in just 20 minutes. Dump the contents into a pan, add water, then simmer until the noodles are tender. You can leave it as is or add a few handfuls of cheese to take things over the top. I tucked some away for my lunch the following day, but y'all, coming home after a busy day of work to this dump and go meal was a lifesaver. And yes, this meal totally tastes as good as it looks. Assembly of this one skillet meal is a cinch. While I'm using diced beef, you can also use fresh or canned chicken, fish, or whatever meat or vegetables you have on hand. When I see jars of prepared meals on my shelf, it just makes me feel more secure knowing that I can cook healthy meals no matter what the situation. And having meals in jars shouldn't be limited to your home kitchen. Assembled meals work especially well for camping. You can easily fill a thermos full of hot water before you leave, then toss in your dried ingredients to reconstitute a delicious, healthy meal, even on the go.
You can take the stress out of weekday or weekend breakfast prep with these recipes.
Could you imagine having a breakfast bake in a jar where all you had to do was just add water to get a morning casserole your family would love? Well, believe it, because this breakfast bake is perfect for road trips, camping, or busy weekend mornings at home when mama needs a break. You've got healthy onions, bell peppers, spinach, powdered cheese, and shredded potatoes that make the meal flavorful and hearty. The end result is pretty stunning, right? Don't worry, your secret is safe with me. This recipe is one that I hope that you'll truly customize and use whatever you've got dehydrated or freeze-dried on hand. I love layering an assortment of dried greens like kale or other veggies like diced zucchini or celery. The possibilities are truly endless. Oatmeal is a weekday breakfast staple in my home because it's the only thing that truly keeps us full, and when you get creative with the toppings, it's easy to keep oatmeal from feeling boring. I love prepping my oatmeal in advance so that either my husband or I can get breakfast going without fussing through cabinets for ingredients in the morning, and two, sometimes he or I will take a jar into work if it's that kind of morning and we're just on the struggle bus. Hey, it happens to the best of us, but at least we're not tempted to go through the drive-thru window. Having that fresh blueberry taste that didn't take my freezer space in the middle of winter is such a treat. To assemble, you'll layer the dry ingredients into a jar and vacuum seal. Who says a weekday breakfast meal can't be decadent? If that's you, you've got to try this brown sugar, dates, and pecan steel-cut oats breakfast in a jar. This also makes the perfect gift during the holiday season. On this particular morning, I packed it in a thermos to go. The assembly is quick, and I've also enjoyed using freeze-dried strawberries, pineapples for a bit of sweetness, and mango. I've included the link below to check out the website if you're interested in keeping up with their sales. And oh, if you prefer a sugar-free option, you can simply omit the sugar or replace it with a non-nutritive sweetener such as stevia. You will absolutely enjoy this one.
Don't forget to click the link to start getting food preservation recipes delivered straight to your inbox. I'll see you in my kitchen or garden soon. Take care, friends.